Welcome back to All Things Creepy. I'm your host, Micah James. Now, if you heard my episode last week, you probably remember me saying that I'm going to be covering all the deaths in the Final Destination franchise. Now, that is still true. However, that's not going to happen this episode. This episode, I am only covering the Final Destination deaths in the first one, in the first film, as that's the only movie I've had time to watch this week, just due to some unfortunate circumstances in my life that happened this past week. One of them being just getting really sick. Just a few things before we get into this episode, is first and foremost, I want to apologize for the audio. I am currently not in my home, and I forgot to even bring my portable microphones with me, so I have to record off my phone. And then secondly, I don't plan on going more than 2 parts on this topic. So if this is not the thing for you, don't worry. The week after next, I will be changing the subject. Next week will be Final Destination 2 through 6. And the week after that, like I said, if this is not your groove, I'll be back to other topics after that. And to kind of finish this part up before we get into the deaths in the first movie, this will be very spoiler heavy. While I'm not necessarily doing a play-by-play for the plot, I'm covering the deaths, which is a massive spoiler because I'm going in order of who died and how they died. So if you don't want any spoilers, I will see you the week after next. And don't worry, I'll give you a spoiler warning for next week's episode as well. So with all that being said, let's jump into this topic. Alright, so let's read the description of Final Destination 1. And I grabbed this off of IMDb. After getting a premonition about a plane crash on his school trip, Alex, a student, saves a few of his classmates. However, their situation gets complicated when death starts chasing them. Now, the first death is kind of like the first unofficial death, as it's not a real life death yet. As the description states, Alex has this dream/premonition about the plane exploding and everyone on the plane dies, Alex and his class included. However, it doesn't take place in the real world, but we do technically see them die. So the first real life death, or at least real life in the movie death that we see, is Alex's premonition coming true. Basically, a fight breaks out between Alex and Carter, who is one of his classmates, due to Alex's outbreak after he wakes up from his dream, and they both get kicked off the plane. Todd, Alex's best friend, Terry, Carter's girlfriend, Valerie, who's a teacher, Billy, who's another student, and Claire, yet another student, also get off the plane. This time the plane really explodes, and the 7 who got off saw it all happen, and they are spared. However, 39 days later, Todd's death begins this chain reaction. That 39th day before Todd dies, they are at the memorial for the classmates who did die from that plane explosion. Todd ends up accidentally hanging himself in the shower after the memorial service. His death is ruled a suicide, and Alex is a suspect, so he is being pursued by these investigators. Alex and Claire discover that death is reclaiming those who escaped their fate at the morgue after running into the mortician William Bloodworth. Now, I mention him because he is going to be a recurring character in this movie series. So after they meet with William, they discuss the next move outside of a cafe when the rest of the survivors end up appearing. Terry, who is Carter's girlfriend, is the next to die. She ends up getting hit by a speeding bus in front of the cafe, as she doesn't really buy into this whole thing that they're all going to die. Eventually, Alex discovers that death is killing them in the order that they would have died on the plane, so that means that Valerie, the teacher, is next. She ends up getting impaled by one of her sharp knives after her house explodes. Alex does try to save her, but he ends up failing. So he does end up revealing his theory to the remaining survivors as they are driving around in Carter's car. However, Carter, who happens to be next, also doesn't believe Alex, so he stops his car on the tracks. Everyone else manages to get out before the train hits, but Carter is stuck. Alex is able to save him in just the nick of time. But as the train hits the car, a piece of shrapnel comes loose and decapitates Billy, who is one of the classmates who was able to get off the plane. It seems like because Alex had intervened, it skipped to the next person, which now makes clear the next one in the sequence. To hide from the detectives, Alex is in a cabin that Claire's family owns. He realizes that she is now the target. He rushes to her house to find her in her car surrounded by live electrical wires, which have been ignited by gasoline. Alex grabs the wires to allow Claire to escape. He does technically die, but ends up being saved, which seems to cause this curse, I guess you could say, to end. We jump to 6 months later when Alex, Claire, and Carter are in Paris. While they are trying to enjoy themselves, Alex notices that death never skipped him to finish the sequence, so it never went back to Carter. In theory, Carter should have died not too long after the live wire incident if Alex's theory was correct. And he just really doesn't feel right. Alex doesn't feel right. It just something feels off. So he takes a walk to clear his head. A bus collision causes a parking sign to get hurled at a neon sign, which then begins to fall. Carter pushes Alex out of the way at the very last second. This is when the sequence continues. The sign swings back and ends up killing Carter, which is where the movie ends. So for the first movie, we don't know if Alex and Claire die. We don't know if death's sequence continues, if Alex and Claire are able to continuously save each other. We don't know that yet. So I guess we have to come back next week to find out what happened to everyone else. So with that being said, I will see you guys next week. I'm hoping next week I'm able to just be done with this topic, as I try to cover a wide variety of topics because I know not every topic is everybody's cup of tea. So hopefully next week I can cover the other 5 movies. So I'll see you guys next week with the next episode.